Forensic Science Lecture 11-5 Other Bloodstain Patterns. Not all bloodstain patterns at a crime scene appear as spatter patterns. Um, some of them are more not quite as straightforward or coming from the impact wound. They occur after the blood has already been or is already present at the scene. One of such is called a contact or transfer pattern, and these are created when an object with blood on it touches one that doesn't have blood on it. It creates a simple transfer patterns that are produced when an object makes contact with the surface and is removed without any movement of that object, such as a bloody fingerprint, footprint, palm print, shoe print, and etc. Things like that. The size and the general shape of the object may be seen in a simple transfer pattern, and so this can help investigators determine maybe what size shoe that individual wears. Another type of transfer pattern or contact pattern is called a swipe pattern, and this is caused by movement of a bloody object across the surface. The pattern starts out with a large area and then lightens and feathers as it moves away from the initial contact point. The direction of separate transfer patterns may be able to show the movement of the suspect, the victim, or how they move through the crime scene after the blood was already present. Also, the first transfer pattern will be darker and heavier with blood and become increasingly lighter as it moves through the scene. It may also be able to tell investigators whether or not whoever was wearing the shoes or present there was either running or walking through the scene. Another type of pattern is called a flows, and these are made by drops or large amounts of blood flowing to the floor, to a surface by gravity. And the flow direction may show the movement of the objects or the body during the incident, and it may be helpful to assess sequence and passage of time. Another pattern are called pools, and these occur when blood collects in a level and undisturbed place. It's considered by considering the drying time, it can yield info about the timing of the event. Also, when looking at pool patterns, blood that pools on an absorbent surface may be absorbed throughout the surface and diffuse, creating a pattern that's much larger than the original pool. So investigators need to take that into account as well. A phenomenon that's known as skeletonization occurs, and this aids in determining the time. This is when the edges of the stain dry to the surface, um, uh, which can occur within 50 seconds of deposition of the droplets. Obviously, the larger of the volume of blood, it's going to take longer for that to happen. But after this time, if the blood stain is altered through contact or wiping motion, the skeletonization perimeter will be left intact. And this can help determine the timing of the movement or activity in the scene. Another pattern is known as the drip trail pattern, and this is a series of drops separate from the other patterns. They're formed by blood dripping off of an object or an injury. They tend to form a line or a path, usually made um, by the individual who was injured, killing the victim or the injury or injuring themselves, that can also cause these drip trail patterns. They may show the direction, the speed of the movement, or they may lead to a discarded weapon. They also provide identification of the subject by his or her own blood. Typically, a drip trail pattern occurs after stabbings, during which the suspect cuts him or herself as a result of the force necessary to stab the victim. As we're talking about all these bloodstain patterns, the documentation of them is key to aid in the reconstruction and the investigation in general. Investigators should note, study, and photograph each pattern as droplets. Most record the location of specific patterns um, accurately for later evaluation. Photos and sketches can point out specific stains to determine direction and force, angle of impact, area of origin. Um, and there are typically two techniques that are used to help document bloodstain patterns. The grid method, which is a grid of squares of known dimensions are set over the entire pattern, and then overall medium range and close-up photos are taken. Of course, with and without markers and rulers and so on. A second technique is called the perimeter ruler test, and this is a rectangular border of rulers is set around each pattern. And a small ruler is placed next to each stain. The larger ruler shows the scale of overall and medium range photos, and then the smaller rulers show the scale for the close-up photos. Some investigators may also use tags in close-up photos to show evidence numbers or details. Area of origin determination can then be calculated when circumstances of the case are warranted, which sometimes they're not always needed. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. When interpreting bloodstain evidence, there's actually only some jurisdictions that have specialists on staff who will decipher the patterns, whether it be at the scene or from photos. So it's important that all personnel be familiar with patterns so that they are recorded and documented properly for use in the reconstruction later. This ends lecture 11-5. There's a quiz next class.